Believe it or not, there was over 40,000 properties that sold in Australia over the last month. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking the 5 best properties that have sold over the last month in Australia, with some specific parameters such as looking at only 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage houses on at least 600 square meter blocks in major metro markets. Why I'm only looking at these types of properties? Because history suggests that the best assets that you can afford to buy are freestanding houses on big blocks of land in major metro markets. Now today we're going to be analysing opportunities in Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth and Darwin. Now coming in at number 5 on the list was number 54 Gascoyne Way in Coolangatta, WA. This 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage, low-set brick and tile house situated on a massive 739 square meter piece of land has recently sold in October for $725,000. There is still so much value over in Perth if you know where to look. And when I was looking at some different properties, there was a bunch of property sales around that Rockingham region down in southwest WA. Now, why this property ended up being the best one was due to the low maintenance, tenant ready nature of the house, the big block of land and where it's situated within the suburb on a nice, quiet, family friendly street, backing onto a beautiful park and just a few kilometres away from Safety Bay Beach. Now Coolangatta is a suburb that's 39 kilometres as the crow flies from the Perth CBD. The suburb has grown by 80% over the last 3 years, making it one of Australia's top performing suburbs in the last 3 years. But the weekly household income was around about $1,200 per week, which is why this one came in at number 5, because I would love to see that average household income up over the $1,500 per week, ideally. But regardless, whoever bought this property, congratulations, it's an absolute cracker. Coming in at number 4 was number 19 Kyabra Street in Farrer, Northern Territory. This 4-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage, low-set house on a 692 square meter block sold recently in September for $750,000. Absolute cracking property right near Palmerston City, just down there in the southeast of the Northern Territory, not too far away from Darwin. In fact, it's only a 20-minute drive to get to Darwin City from this suburb. What I love about this property is it's got a really strong expected rental return and really good rental yields up there in Darwin right now. You're buying a super undervalued market that hasn't really performed really well. And according to Cotality, Darwin is experiencing the highest capital growth rates in the country right now because of how undervalued and how affordable some of the properties are up there. Now, why this property made the list was because the affluence of the suburb Farrer itself, with an average household income of over $2,500 per week, being tiny little Darwin and such high average household incomes make this suburb super affluent, and lots of owner-occupiers make up the property purchases in this particular area. So you've got low vacancy rates, really good rental returns, an undervalued suburb, super high income earners, and a high percentage of owner occupiers in this suburb is what gave this property the number 4 ranking in Australia over the last month. Coming in at number 3 is 6 Hunt Court in Collingwood Park, Queensland. The 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 3-car spaces property situated on a huge 826 square meter block of land has come in at number 3 on the rankings today because of the value of the land and the location of the land for this property. The property sold in October for $730,000, and as buyers agents that are purchasing 1 to 2 properties in Brisbane every single month, it is super tricky to find properties in the low $700,000 that are removed from all of those red flags. Now, I'd love to do a proper flood search on this property to see if there is any issues. However, according to property.com, it indicated that there was no flooding issues associated with this property. However, it would always be advised to check with your solicitor, check with the local council, rather than just trusting those websites. That would be my biggest concern with this property, because if it is in a flood zone, backing onto that nature reserve, backing onto that waterway, then it would obviously rule this property out from being the number 3 ranked property over the last month. However, because Property Me indicated that it was not in a flood zone, it absolutely ticked all of the boxes. The massive block of land gives you so much opportunity. The property itself is not very nice at all. It is an old, unrenovated property. It does require a lot of work. It does require a bit of an uplift cosmetically, but the opportunity is, of course, the land on a nice, quiet, family-friendly street, over 800 square meters with a super wide frontage, gives you the capacity to really add some value to this property. You know, you could knock down the existing house and rebuild a beautiful, big, brand new one. You could renovate the existing house and build a granny flat in the backyard. And subject to council approval, you may even be able to build a duplex in the backyard of this property and get 2 titles. So there's a lot to love about this particular property. Collingwood Park is an amazing suburb. It's seen an average annual growth rate of 8.82% over the last 10 years. It's got a vacancy rate of 0.79%, making it one of the most undersupplied suburbs from a rental perspective at the moment, and Collingwood Park being one of my favourite suburbs in Ipswich right now. It's really growing rapidly at the moment. There is a lot of demand in that area. It's still super close to the CBD, being just 23 kilometres as the crow flies. Short 45-minute drive to the city. Doesn't take you too long via public transport. So it was a no-brainer for me after doing some research on property.com, and it indicated there was no flood zones for this one to come in at number 3. We're getting down to the pointy end now, and coming in at number 2 is 16 Claudia Crescent in Kurrajong, Victoria. This lovely low-set brick and tile, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage house on a 638 square metre block of land, sold in September for $715,000. Now, we believe that Melbourne is one of, if not the most undervalued major metro market in Australia right now, with Kurrajong having an average annual growth rate of just 6.84%. Now, according to Homely's data that looked at property values from 1970 through to 2016, over that 46-year period, if you add up the total return on investment divided by 46 years, Melbourne had an average annual growth rate of 9.5%. So with Kurrajong currently sitting at 6.84, it is chronically undervalued in comparison to what these types of suburbs have historically done. The reason that this property came in at number 2 on this month's rankings is it's just 37 kilometres from Australia's most populated capital city, being Melbourne. It's got a vacancy rate of just 1.08% right now, making it chronically undersupplied. There's only 23.7% renters in this particular suburb, so there is lots of owner occupiers. There is good average household incomes. Now, some of the downfalls is it obviously is on the outskirts of the Melbourne CBD, and it is a property that's on the outskirts of that suburb as well. Now, we know down in Victoria right now, it is experiencing the highest number of people moving to that particular state, and there is a huge amount of demand coming into Victoria. And unfortunately, we do not have access to enough tradespeople, enough suppliers to bring new supply to the market. So there's still this huge disconnect between supply versus demand. And if history is to repeat itself, Melbourne looks like it's got incredible potential over the next 10 to 15 years. So whoever went out there and bought this property for $715,000, congratulations, well done. You've picked an absolutely great property, super low maintenance, tenant ready. This is a type of property that you could purchase, set and forget, hold for the next 10 or 15 years and wait and see what the market does. Now, coming in at the top of this month's rankings, when we're looking at properties that have sold between $700,000 to $750,000 that look like a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2+ car garage on at least a 600 square metre block in Australia's metro markets, is 7 Capri Court in Deer Park. This 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on a 626 square metre block recently sold in September of 2025 for between $700,000 to $750,000. This is an incredible purchase because what I love about the house, it is a nice, low maintenance, tenant ready, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom property, but it does have some renovation potential. You could do a nice cosmetic upgrade, some new paint, some new flooring, some new window coverings, re-landscape the backyard. Subject to council approval, you may be able to fit a granny flat in the back corner of this property as well. There is just so much potential for this particular property. And the reason it came in at number 1 was the fact that it is 18 kilometres from the Melbourne CBD. It takes you less than 30 minutes to drive to the Melbourne city from this particular suburb. It's about 40 minutes via public transport as well. It absolutely blows my mind that you can still buy a property like this for less than $750,000 in the Melbourne property market. Vacancy rates at 0.89%, located just 18 kilometres from the CBD. You've got an average annual growth rate sitting about 6.32%. You've seen a growth rate of just under 5% over the last 3 years and just under 4% over the last 12 months. Knowing that most properties in Melbourne have dropped in value over the last 12 months and the last 3 years, this is one of the better suburbs in the Western Corridor of Melbourne, located on a nice, quiet, family-friendly street, backing onto a little community park, close to major arterial roads, close to public transport options, close to local amenities such as schools, shops, etc. Of the more than 40,000 properties that have sold in Australia over the last month, and the handful of properties that have sold between that $700,000 to $750,000 price range, I believe that this property and whoever bought this property has made a great decision, and I think this property has a lot of potential for the short, medium, and long-term future. If I had my time over and if I was going out there with a budget, this would be the property that I would secure. Being in the most populated capital city of the properties that we've looked at, being extremely close to that major metro market as well, being a super undervalued capital city that hasn't seen the same growth rates of a Brisbane or a Perth over the last 3 or 5 years, with a lot of potential for the future. I'm super excited to see where this property could go, and that's what makes it number 1 on this month's rankings.
G'day guys, my name's Ben and I'm the director here at Pumped on Property, and I just want to say a massive thank you for watching our content today. Now, if you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 12 months, then the team and I would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. In that session, we can talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and we can deeply educate you on the Australian market. And then you can take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each week. To book your session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that book your free strategy session button. But either way, we wish you all the best on your journey as an investor to financial freedom.